I'm Latasha James. I am the founder of James and Park Creative, a video studio in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I also host the Freelance Friday podcast, which helps entrepreneurs, creatives, freelancers make a living doing what they love online.
On cam ready in 3, 2, 1.
This is Unknown to Known, an on-cam ready presentation. I'm Jamie Maglietta. Today's guest is Latasha James. I'm so excited she could join us. See, back in 2022, when I left my full-time job at CNN and producer of Reliable Sources, I began looking for creators who were freelancers and talking about what it took to pivot into that space. And that's when I came across Latasha. Now, at the time, I wound up leaving CNN and working at BET practically full time, but as a freelancer. They allowed me to have a podcast. So I began podcasting and putting it on YouTube. And that's when I started to listen to her podcast more and subscribe to her channel. I really liked how she was designing her studio and creating content that elevated her as an expert within our niche, but in a unique way. So when I went to the Reallys in Atlanta and won that award for short form content creation and met Latasha there, it was one of those fangirl moments because I couldn't believe that I was finally seeing someone I followed on YouTube in person. I've interviewed celebrities, Uma Thurman for one. I've never been really starstruck, but I was in this case because she has influenced my life and my decisions because she has been ahead of me. You know, in our conversation, she talks about how she's been at this for 12 years. Here is a look at what her studio was like in the beginning. You know, I just did a YouTube video on my studio and hers is still way better than mine is now, but you just have to start, guys, is the whole point. And now here she is with this professional studio. And when I first saw her pro studio with the black, and I was like, oh, I want that. Yeah, you want that. It doesn't mean you can have it right away. But what can you do in the meantime to kind of get the vision that you see, but for cheap or within your own home? I like the rotten mango vibe with the lamps. So I incorporated that. I also liked her black background idea. So I did brown because I think it just really helps me pop off screen with the gray hair and my brown hair. You have to make those choices and you need those influences. And she's someone who influenced me. So I'm really glad that we could bring her on as a guest. And I hope that you'll check out everything she has to offer in the description because she has a YouTube cohort coming out, which is actually out by the time of this podcast. And you could be working with her to build your YouTube channel. Here's our conversation. Latasha, thanks so much for being with us. You know, you've built such a strong voice in the creator freelance space. It means a lot to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie. It was awesome meeting you in person, and I am such a big fan of everything that you're doing. I think it's really important.
Thank you. I really enjoyed meeting you as well. I've never had that moment. So that was
kind of weird.
That was pretty surreal for me.
Yes, that's a good word for it, surreal. It's like, it's funny to remember that what we're doing actually, impacts real people in the real world.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that origin story? You know, what first drew you to YouTube in the beginning?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So I always say I'm a kind of a YouTube dinosaur because I've been on YouTube for quite some time, I think around 12 years. And I am such a fan of what you do because I actually was going to school for film and media, specifically in the broadcast kind of area. So I thought I wanted to work in the news. And I started a YouTube channel honestly, it started as a place to put my film projects and just kind of get practice with different things. And I fell into the beauty community on YouTube, actually. That was just the type of content that I gravitated towards and that I had a lot of fun, creating for and following. And so that's how my YouTube channel started, actually. I was just creating beauty videos, having fun, playing around. And over the years, it's developed into a marketing and business oriented channel with a sprinkle of lifestyle and beauty still in there sometimes. But yeah, my main focus is helping freelancers and creatives earn a living on the
Mhm.
internet.
So if you're a freelancer and you're in this creative space, you really should check out her podcast. I started to listen to that podcast when I first became a freelancer and was podcasting. And I can say, you're going to go through tons of different types of content creation experiences. Like I started out, I was asking people, why do you do what you do? And then it became, well, maybe I should just start asking people for tips on how to be on camera ready. You're going to have those moments of change. And so listening to her talking about how it started as beauty products and beauty tutorials and now she's talking about business, you too can evolve. You just have to start. And
Yes.
so when we look at, where she's come from now, I just want you all to remember she said it took how many years? 15?
So
12?
12, yeah, going on 15.
So, guys, 12 years is a long time, and you can't think that your magic is going to happen overnight. So,
Yeah.
walk us through, what you did in the beginning that you look back on and you're like, oh, that was so cringe. I really
Mm.
can't believe I did that, but I'm glad I did it because I learned from it.
Ooh. I think pretty much everything from the first couple years on YouTube is pretty cringy. I left most of those old videos up though. I think it's important to. I think it's really fun to see the journey. And strangely, some of those videos still get views, actually. Um, but yeah, I think in general, I lacked a lot of confidence. I think that comes with talking to a camera, talking into a microphone for days and weeks on end. You just improve without even realizing it. And so, yeah, I just look at my delivery. I think that's the biggest thing. The equipment, of course, like it was also shot on a, you know, point and shoot like 480p camera, so that was bad too. But the biggest thing I think is that delivery and that confidence with which comes with time and exposure. You just have to like put yourself in those rooms and start having those conversations.
And that's something that we talk about here often. I've had television news anchors on from CNN, Fox News Channel, and they all say the same thing. Repetition is what leads to confidence. Confidence is really truly built, guys, by creating content. The more content you create, the more confident you're going to become within your messaging, within shooting, within whatever lighting you
Yeah.
need to feel confident on camera. And I think it's just an interesting journey that is one many professionals need to be taking right now. Your latest episode on your podcast, you were talking about the importance of being a content creator
Yeah.
as a digital business. And I would love you to share some of that take here on this show.
Yeah, it was interesting. I got on a call with my accountant. They're awesome. They're called Evolved Finance, and they work pretty much exclusively with high six and seven figure entrepreneurs. So they get some really interesting data about what's working for online business owners who are, successful. And they brought up a lot is changing right now in the online business world. Ads are getting more expensive. There are changes in the economy and it's just getting more expensive to run an online business. And so there were some questions about, well, how are these people who are doing it so well? How are your clients getting leads? And they brought up content marketing, like that they're
Mhm.
seeing so many of their, again, seven figure, high six figure clients leaning into content and specifically YouTube content, and that more authoritative content is what I call it.
Mhm.
So that can exist on platforms aside from YouTube, but I really think of YouTube and podcasting as the place to go for authority.
Yeah, and as you have the Freelance Friday podcast, I also have the Think Like a Producer, where it's just like helping people wrap their head around this content creation journey and
Yeah,
how to apply what a producer mindset is for television news to
yeah,
creating content for YouTube or even podcasts. And I was truly connected to what you were saying on your episode because I've been telling people this. So it was nice to have some,
yep,
backup. But also, I would say that in-person events, I'm also
yeah,
seeing a rise of and seeing that help people sell their digital products. But
yes,
you also host like online events. Do you
yeah.
host in person too, or how does that work for you?
Not yet. I actually do have a studio space here in Michigan, in Ann Arbor,
Mhm.
Michigan, and I'm hosting a couple of my first events in the next couple months. Nothing too huge, just
Mhm.
little meetups and things here and there. But I agree. I that is something that I've noticed, post pandemic. I first off have been invited to so many more events to speak. And I just noticed like the connections that I made. I mean, you and I are an example of this. When you meet
Mhm.
in person, now we have this relationship and no pressure, but it will probably be an ongoing relationship for a while.
Mhm.
It has a little bit more of
Mhm.
more of a staying power than just a like or a
Mhm.
DM on social media. So yeah, I definitely noticed that trend happening. And to content, sorry to cut you off, but
No.
to the content point, something else I mentioned in that podcast is all of my speaking gigs were booked before I ever stepped foot on a stage, by the way. They were all booked because I have a YouTube channel and a podcast, and conference organizers look to those sources to fill those stages.
And that's the point we keep making here is, on that journey from unknown to known, as a television news producer, I would not be booking someone if they didn't have that online presence in some way. And now that is even more so. You know,
Hmm.
you want to be showing up in the scroll, you want to be showing up on YouTube, and you want people to know what your thought leadership is. And if you are an expert, in my opinion, I feel like if you are an expert, you should be leaning into the news occasionally too, because then it helps legitimize your authority within your niche. I've
Yeah.
noticed you've done that too on your
Yeah.
YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it is important to, well, one, leaning into news pieces in terms of commentary or
Hmm.
responses, it's it's great content ideas. It's out there. So it's pretty low lift content. If you're like, man, I don't know what to say about podcasting, look up the latest industry report or go find some interesting quotes or news hits to respond to. So that's it's just a great idea. But I also think that leveraging it as a source, as data, it does, just like you said, it legitimizes what you're saying. I mean, I can tell you all day long, hey guys, I think you should be on YouTube. But if I give a statistic that
Hmm.
supports that about how many users are on YouTube or how much revenue a certain company brought in using YouTube, it supports that and makes it a little bit more tangible for people, I think.
Yeah, and for listeners who are starting to feel confident enough to put themselves out on YouTube, what advice do you have to help them narrow down on their niche or their focus
Mhm.
so that they can remain consistent?
Yeah. I always say start with something that you could talk about all day long for free. So
Hmm.
if I gave you a stage and said, "Hey Jamie, get entertain us for a while." What would
Sure,
that
let me do it.
Yeah. What would that topic be? We all have a topic like that. And that doesn't mean that, you don't need to do any research or pull any news or, any data to support those videos, but I mean, I could talk about video all day. I could talk about content all day. I could
Yeah,
talk about entrepreneurship. I
me
love
too.
it. I can't shut up about it. Actually, that's my problem. That's why I'm not a short form content creator. I struggle with that. So, yeah, I say start there. Even before we get into is this niche the most profitable? How competitive is it? All of that should be a part, of your research process. But I see people sometimes get a little too stuck in that. And they're like,
Mhm.
okay, I found the perfect, opening for me. But it's something they're not passionate about or they're not super knowledgeable about. They don't have experience in, because that's another piece of it. You're bringing in your experience from working at these news organizations and being on camera and behind the camera. And, that's really valuable. You're not talking about it just from a theoretical point of view, right? You're bringing
Mhm.
in those lived experiences, as am I. And I think that's really, really important. So uh, sometimes I will say starting 12 years ago, I had a bit of a- an, an unfair advantage in that I didn't know what a niche was. I was truly doing this just because I was
Yeah.
passionate about it. Yeah. And even though, sure, if I would have started maybe with a bit more strategy, I would be, even more successful now. But I gave myself that opportunity to play a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that is important in the beginning. It doesn't mean you can't play strategically, and at least get in the lane that, hey, I want to talk about business or video or whatever. But you don't need to have it so fine tuned on day one that you're like feeling stagnant or stuck. I think you got to give yourself a little room to explore.
Mm-hmm. I really want to make sure that we talk about, the tools that you use, what it was like speaking on stage compared to being on YouTube,
Yeah.
and just how people can work with you and learn more about what you do as a business. But before we go into all that, I want to focus on YouTube a little bit more.
Yeah.
The global creator economy is now estimated at 250 billion, and it's expected to be at 480 billion by 2027. Like that
Oh,
number alone, when I saw that stat, I couldn't believe it.
yeah.
And there's so many, I think it was like 69 million creators are active worldwide on YouTube.
Hmm.
And it just makes me wonder, how do people stand out? Is it that you're saying like be passionate and focus on something you can really talk about forever? Or is there a system to it that people need to kind of tap into,
Hmm.
like a
Well,
trick?
yeah, yeah. I wish I could snap my fingers and make us
Mhm.
all the biggest YouTubers ever. For me and my experience, truly, I am an example of slow and steady growth. I am an example of consistency. There are other creators, I'm sure you will
Mhm.
or have talked to them who have like this viral next day success. That hasn't been my story, and
Mhm.
there are two different sides of it, and both have their pros and cons. I am an example of consistency. I think that is my number one secret is I have posted pretty much at minimum once a week for 12 years. I
Mhm.
think I missed a couple of weeks when I was like very, very sick.
Shame
um
on you. Shame on
yeah,
you.
I know. That's it.
It's
And
called plan ahead.
right, I know. Batch your content. Um but yeah, and I think it ties into though that passion piece because when I say that, some people are like, "Oh my gosh, like
Mhm.
why don't you take time off?" I love it. I truly love creating YouTube videos and
Mhm.
always have. And I started when I was actually in college and then working in the corporate world full time, so that YouTube was my side hustle for many years, and I looked forward to it. I looked forward to my Saturday morning editing sessions. Uh,
Mhm.
um, so I think it all does tie together. You do have to be passionate to stay that consistent. But I also just want to say really quick, when we hear about how many creators are out there, it is easy to get overwhelmed and be like, oh my gosh, there's so much competition. But something I like to keep in mind is that's opportunity. You know,
Mhm.
if somebody, a big, huge creator with lots of followers is talking about video marketing or, personal branding, that's more opportunities for your videos now to get recommended in their sidebar or
Mhm.
to meet them and collaborate with them to interview them, right? So I try to see competition or a large pool of creators not as that, but as opportunity.
Are there any like beginner routines that you suggest? Like you mentioned a Saturday in the beginning. Is that something maybe you would suggest people do now? Maybe like one day a week to just get started?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously it's so dependent on people's schedules, but for me, when it
Mhm.
was my side hustle, yeah, I spent a couple hours of my weekend, uh, shooting and editing my YouTube video, and then I could go off and enjoy my life, and that
Mhm.
was doable for me. That once a week schedule. Nowadays, that I'm full time in my business, I try to batch at least my podcast content. So I'll usually record 2 to 3 episodes at a
Yeah.
time, and I try to batch all of the process. So, I'll batch my outlines and then I'll have a recording day where you only have to do hair and makeup once. You only have to set up your equipment once. And then same thing for editing or if you're outsourcing that. But yeah,
Mhm.
batching really, really helps.
Yeah, I batched my Think Like a Producer series into the end of January, and it is October of 2025. So,
So
guys, it
nice.
is all about batch recording, so you don't have to worry about it. Then you can focus on the marketing.
Yep.
The marketing is the key. You can't get people there if you're not putting your content out there. And one thing I'm noticing right now is, everyone is flocking to YouTube as
Mhm.
traditional media starts splintering and people are pulling away from cable news. They're all trying to create their own news outlets on YouTube or Substack. And I,
Yeah.
I tell experts all the time, now's the time to essentially stake out your land on YouTube and start building your house. Because if you're not there when everyone starts moving over, which it
Yep.
feels like, then you're going to get overlooked. So,
Yeah.
what's your take on just the way the world has kind of evolved in the last year or so with the new media space?
Oh yeah. Oh, well, I I see it. So many journalists and
Hmm.
news folks are moving to independent media, and I think it's awesome. I think it's great for them. They get to, I'm sure, are probably earning more and having that ownership and creative control, even if they're not earning more, I think is really valuable. And also just speaking to, I think having independent journalism is so important. But yeah, I definitely see YouTube as an investment. It's funny that you're bringing this up because actually just today I got a like on a very old Instagram reel. I think it was from a year ago where I was talking about a feature that was coming to Threads or had been, I got kind of a scoop on this
Hmm.
feature that was coming and the feature came out today. It's called Ghost Posts on Threads. And so that Instagram post was a clip from a YouTube video that I did a year ago talking about this topic. And so sometimes we think about um, content as being very ephemeral. YouTube is not. YouTube really does have a long shelf life, and this authoritative type of content, uh, it all kind of adds to your portfolio and is such an investment, a time investment.
To the point you just made, you can break everything down into smaller bite-sized pieces for social media.
Yep.
Do you do that as part of your strategy as like a focus, or do you mainly focus on YouTube and then do like behind the scenes elsewhere?
I always think YouTube first. YouTube,
Yeah.
if I'm short on time or resources or whatever, YouTube is always going to come first. That's always going to be my priority. And I also think in terms of topics, YouTube first as well. Um,
Hmm.
I do try to think a little bit more evergreen with YouTube.
Yeah.
Occasionally, like that example I just shared, I was sharing more of a newsy piece,
Hmm.
but I knew it would be relevant because I was talking about a feature that was coming. I knew it would be relevant at least for a while. I try to stay away from, hey, this is something happening today. Not quite as helpful on YouTube. But yeah, generally it is a part of my process to repurpose tools like the one we're recording this on
Hmm.
Riverside is a great help at that. They have a magic clips feature that can pull out clips for you. So it makes it really easy to just
Hmm.
pop them onto YouTube Shorts, Instagram, TikTok, wherever, your audience is or wherever you want to be.
Yeah, and because she mentioned Riverside, you guys can use my affiliate link and my discount code OCR15 for Riverside. But I hear you always talk about Metricool, right?
Yeah, Metricool, yeah.
Metricool. Tell me about it because I'm using Opus Clip right now for
Okay.
scheduling, but
Yep.
I will eventually need to go on to another platform. So tell us about this
Yeah.
platform, like, and other tools that you suggest people check out.
Yeah, Metricool is awesome, and I am very fortunate to have them as a partner of my podcast. I've worked with them for several years now. They're a social media scheduling tool, but they also do really awesome things, really advanced analytics. You can run ads straight from the tool. They've got a ton of fancy AI tools for, finding topics and copywriting and all kinds of things in there. But for me, I really use it as a part of that repurposing process
Hmm.
that we just talked about. So you can upload your videos and have them publish automatically. So no cell phones required, which is nice. I try to stay off my phone, believe it or not, as a content creator. And you can also repurpose each of those clips to different platforms. So you can change the caption. For example, if you're going to upload to YouTube Shorts, you can have one caption for YouTube Shorts, one for X, one for TikTok, because all the platforms kind of have their own unique culture, I like to say, or their own kind of vibe. So it's important to, adjust the captions. You can
Hmm.
also, like I said, analytics are so important, right? Knowing what is working. So getting these reports automatically delivered to you and being able to repurpose your content. through the analytics features are really awesome. So yeah, that's what I use for strategy and for publishing. And then for recording, I also love Riverside, big fan of that for remote interviews or even just solo shows.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to open a room and just record quickly if I'm traveling or something like that. What else? For my editor, I use Final Cut Pro personally, but I always recommend Descript to people who are new to editing. Riverside has some they've come a long way in their editing too, but either of those tools are great if you're sort of a beginner editor.
Yeah, I would agree. Riverside has good AI audio to help
Mm-hmm.
smooth it all out, but I still am running it through Descript after. As
Okay,
of
yep.
this recording, I still run it through Descript after for studio audio. And then
Oh,
I am editing in Riverside now that they have the editing tools, but
yeah,
it's not the layering that you get from, a CapCut or an Adobe. So
yep,
you just have to think, it is more beginner editing at this point, but
yep,
it has it all there and it's a good tool. As I mentioned, Opus Clip, like that's a good one that I've used for clipping videos that are already on YouTube. So
yeah,
Opus is more about like, hey, I was on this YouTube, podcast, or I produced this YouTube show and I want clips from it. So you would put it into Opus, Opus clips it for you, and then they have a scheduler. So you
yeah,
can schedule it out and it gives you, AI suggestions. But it's all about knowing where your audience is. I always say you could show up, but
Mm-hmm.
if your audience isn't there, you're in the wrong place.
yep,
So it is really important to figure out the where. And I
yes,
like that the platform you're mentioning could potentially provide people with that analytics, the
yeah.
analytics to make those decisions.
Yeah. Can I give you one more tool recommendation,
Yeah, add
actually?
it. Go for it.
Uh, Cast Magic. Have you heard of that one?
No.
I use that because, that one is very similar to Opus Clip. You can kind of
Mhm.
upload a live link or upload audio or video in there. But this one is actually primarily text based. So
Mhm.
it's great I use it to get my YouTube timestamps, especially if it's a long podcast. I don't want to have to
Mhm.
watch through the whole thing again. So get my YouTube timestamps, newsletter content, outlines, um,
Oh,
threads,
nice.
posts, LinkedIn, all of that. Because I think that's really important too. Email marketing is huge. If you don't have an email list, start one, for YouTubers. I think
Mhm.
it's so valuable. So yeah, that's a good one
And there's
for
a and
written
there's a
content.
lot of and there's a lot of ways to come up with those email lists, like offering
Yes.
a freebie.
Yep.
You do that with yours.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I built my email list to 40,000 people with one simple, 10-page ebook, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so guys, if you're thinking about trying to build your email list, I hope you hear this because dropping that free offer, I know you may not want to. You're like, I don't want to give it away for free, but it will help you build your email list. So get
Yes.
creative and start thinking through how you can turn your expertise into content and a free offer.
Yep.
So I also want to get to the fact that you've been speaking, and I love how you said that you've been booked to speak without ever speaking. That to me is exactly why I have this show,
Yep.
because I truly believe that it's your audition. If
Yeah.
you want press, if you want to be on TV, if you want to be a speaker, show up on YouTube. So tell
hmm
us about your speaking experiences. How was it so
Yeah.
far?
I do. I love speaking. I've been very lucky to be asked to speak at some awesome conferences, social media marketing world, and
Mhm.
um, I just did presented an award at the Reelies, which you're a winner
Yay.
of, which is awesome. Yeah, I've been on some awesome stages, and I do. I think the energy is so different. As content creators, we get so used to being in these four walls, talking to
Mhm.
a camera. Even when we're doing interviews with people, it's still, we still can't reach out and shake hands. It's different. Being on stage, you get to what's really interesting as a content creator is you get that feedback instantly. I can tell when I make a reference to something or, bring up some data or bring up an example and it instantly resonates. And I think that is super valuable because now there are certain go tos that I have in my video content that I'm like, I know this one works. Like, I know this is going to stop the scroll because it
Mhm.
made people gasp or made people laugh in a room. So I highly recommend it. It's really fun. And as far as booking it, yeah, I think it's all about having that clearly defined niche and having a lot of examples, having a lot of authoritative examples. Um, yeah, I mean, truly, that's how pretty much everyone's reached out to me is, hey, we found you on YouTube when we searched for video or podcast or social media
Mhm.
marketing.
And it's also about the frameworks, which
Mm-hmm.
I've heard you deliver. And
Yeah.
frameworks are a really good way for you to craft your thought leadership into content. If you are listening and you're thinking, well, I don't know what to talk about, like think out your frameworks. You could build out a framework. Maybe there's 5 steps, and each video could be one of the steps. And you
Yeah.
could take people along the journey of your framework and just offer a free, download as
Yeah.
part of it to get you right. I mean, sounds like a
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's a session workshop essentially.
Mhm.
And if that's something that you're really intentionally trying to do too, I would encourage you treat your YouTube videos like a workshop, like a talk.
Mhm.
Watch past presentations from your dream conferences or events and kind of model them after that sort of that model, if you will, that session description with your own spin on it. And
Mhm.
like you said, treat it like an audition for sure.
Yeah. So before we talk about what you have going on, your offers, and how people can connect with you, I want to ask 2 questions to give people some last minute tips. So we talked about, starting your YouTube channel, but to button it up, what are like the 5 tips maybe, or the 5 steps you would recommend people think through or start planning out today if they want to have a YouTube channel in, say, 2026?
Yeah. Well, I would say first, know what you're going to talk about. So define that niche. And I like to do a free write, honestly. Just start by writing out some ideas, video ideas. You can refine them using tools, using, research, but just start with a free write. Um, most important, honestly, the most important part is to just start because as I'm living proof of, you can redefine that niche, you can pivot, you can change direction. But if you don't enjoy it, if you aren't online at all, you can't refine anything. So you just have to start. I always tell people, my first YouTube video has 100 views. The first YouTube video that I ever posted, and that's after 12 years. So if it makes you feel any better, not that many people are going to see it, and I don't mean that in a discouraging way. I mean that in, this is the rough draft. Um, and then I think consistency while improving, but honestly, don't even think too hard about the improvement part because like you mentioned, it's going to happen. That practice really is the improvement. Don't overthink the tech either. I think that's another point I'd like to add is nowadays, if you have a cell phone truly or a webcam, you can make something that is
Mhm.
at least passable and improve over time. Don't wait until you have the big fancy camera. You don't need it.
Mhm. And to that point, that's what I focus on. Focus
Hmm.
on that elementary beginning with your cell phone.
Yep.
Anyone can be a creator, social media, YouTube,
Yep.
podcasts with your phone. I
Mm.
mean, there are documentaries made with iPhone 16s.
Yeah.
So if you think about it through that lens, I shot a documentary where we used iPhone 14s for the interviews with our subjects and also had the Sony Red cameras. And the iPhones actually came out a little bit better
Yeah.
in some lighting situations. So iPhones are great, whatever cell phone you have to get started. I'm using right now my Mac. I bought this brand new Mac and the cameras, I think, great. I
Yeah.
tested out a few cameras and I was like, you know what? I like this one better. So guys,
Yep.
it can be cheap and easy. And, as I mentioned in my intro, you can see the beginning of where she started. I have that one of those first studio videos till
Yeah.
now and see that it is a transformation. It is a process and you just got to start and you'll start to figure out your way and how you want to show up confidently every day on camera. So the other thing I wanted to ask you was, for someone who creates content all the time, how do you advise people to kind of remain consistent all year round? Like you mentioned, you were sick those 2 days, so you
Hmm.
didn't really, post.
Yeah.
If they aren't seeing the numbers and you're working with them, How do you get them to keep going? Like, what are the words of encouragement that you might share with them to just get them over that hump?
Yeah. Well, I think you do have to go into it knowing it's just like going to the gym, right?
Mhm.
You don't go to I started a Pilates practice maybe 2 years ago, and I wanted to quit after the first time because I was like, "This is really hard." And, surprise, I didn't wake up feeling super strong or having,
You didn't
ripped
walk in and
abs.
you didn't walk out
Yeah.
as a Pilates expert? Like,
Yeah, right. And it's the same process. You have to understand that this is an investment, just like, going to a weekly Pilates class is an investment in your health. Posting that weekly YouTube video is an investment in your business. It's an investment in your future. So don't expect overnight results. If you get lucky and get it, just take that as luck. Don't take that as the expectation. Um, but also, it is about looking at that data
Mhm,
after a period of time. And I think if nothing else, that's what those first few months are, is you're building data. So now you have something to analyze. Because
mhm.
again, just thinking and looking at other people's stuff, that's not building your own unique data. That's not building relationships with your audience. You have to have something to look at. So yeah, put on your strategist hat after some time and you'll be able to make some tweaks and see, hey, this is where people are dropping off. Maybe I need to, pivot that, or maybe my thumbnails aren't getting a good click through rate. So I need to adjust that. You'll get that, those feedback from the comments as well. Hopefully, people saying, hey, love your audio, or hey, can't hear you that well, and you'll have places to improve.
And that data that she's saying, is going to also help you start crafting out how you want to show up each time. I
Hmm.
had this one video hit and I was reviewing YouTube podcasts, and I'm going to continue to do that. I just had to stop because I'm building out my visibility program. And so this one video, almost 9,000 views, and I was like, what?
Yep.
Who would have thought, guys? I was just
Yep.
having fun. The other
Hmm.
thing, oh, I should have mentioned this. The new tool I just got yesterday was vidIQ. Have you
Oh
tried
yeah.
that?
Yeah, I have. It's good. I use TubeBuddy, which it's like some very similar tool. But those are awesome for figuring out YouTube keywords and
Hmm.
titles, and I don't know what else you use it for, but that's
Yeah,
the
the
main thing. Yep.
optimization,
Yep.
the thumbnail ideas. Not
Yeah.
really. I just try, I like what I'm doing and I'm not going to change it right now.
Yeah. Yep. I hear you.
So, why don't you tell people more about what you have going on with the YouTube cohort that you have?
Yeah, sure. I have a YouTube cohort. It's called the YouTube Creator Accelerator. So it's a 5 week. The goal of it is really to get you to post that first video. Week by week, we go over kind of all of those steps that I just talked about, coming up with your idea, building out your tech stack. And most importantly, it's done in a group of other people who are in a similar boat as you, because it is scary. It is scary being kind of alone on an
Mhm.
island, being like, hope maybe one person will see this. So it kind of makes it a little bit easier if you have a group of people cheering you on and giving you some loving feedback along the way. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's great. And then if you need a studio in Ann Arbor, go to you guys, right? So I'll make sure there's a
Yeah.
link to that in the description. And
Yep.
before I let everyone go, I give them 30 seconds to introduce who they are and what they do, because in a TV media interview, you always have 30 seconds to give like your spiel. So, Latasha, 30 seconds. Who are you?
No pressure.
Pressure.
I I'm Latasha James. I am the founder of James and Park Creative, a video studio in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I also host the Freelance Friday podcast, which helps entrepreneurs, creatives, freelancers make a living doing what they love online.
I love that. And you were under 30, so you'd be a great
Perfect.
soundbite.
Was sweating a little.
The pressure's on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad we could talk. Thank you so much for being here. Are there any last thoughts before we go? You feel
Just
good?
start. Just
Let's
start,
start.
y'all. Please.
Mhm.
It's really
Amen.
fun. It's
Just do
really
it.
fun being a YouTuber, so just do it.
And you can make money. Guys, we did
Yes.
mention affiliate partnerships. There's
Yeah.
other ways, but you need to check out Latasha's channel to learn more about how to build it into a business and how you can start leveraging your expertise online to create that YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.